right, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching the recording for our third Gift of Open Source webinar with Amy June. Today we are going to be talking about community contributions with WordPress. A few thoughts. I actually didn't clarify this with Amy June beforehand, but usually we keep questions for the end just to keep from disrupting the flow of the presentation. If you feel like you're going to forget it, feel free to put it in chat and we'll circle back afterward. And I am going to put a link in the chat with a document that has a bunch of links that are all of the references that Amy June uses during her presentation today. So take it away, Amy June.
Thank you. So this is a little bit like last week's presentation where I talked about different things that you could do beyond code in Drupal. But we're going to talk about WordPress specifically today, and we're going to talk a little bit about code too. So like Katie said, my name is Amy June. I work with Canopy Studios and we're a partner with Pantheon. I am the community ambassador and QA engineer. You can find me at Volkswagen Check across all of the medias. And I just want to highlight some of the things I really like to do in the community is I am an event organizer. I help organize local events like San Francisco Drupal Users Group and Bay Area Drupal Camp, but I also help organize regional and national events like DrupalCon and WordCamp US. I am on the community working group community health team in the Drupal sphere. We work on communication styles and things like that. I was a hospice nurse, or I am still a hospice nurse, and I have a dual focus on the community and accessibility in open source, and I coordinate a non-code contribution. We organize ally talks where we get together once a month and talk about all things accessibility, and that's CMS agnostic. And I'm a core mentor for Drupal contributions. I am a Pantheon hero. It is a wonderful program. I highly recommend checking it out. You get to work with fine folks like Katie and McKenna, on a weekly basis, and they have these really unique missions that you can do and help kind of spark your path for the month or the week and give you ideas on what you can do to contribute back. So I want to go over, and I like to do this at every workshop, why give back to open source. Number one reason, contributing makes you feel really good. Not only do you help move your particular open source project like WordPress closer to perfection, but it also gives you a little bit of street cred in that space. It helps build your resume. We have WordPress profile pages where it highlights different things that you do in the community. And the more you contribute, the more you learn. And contributing makes you feel more integrated part of the WordPress community, because now not only like for the content delivery, but you have another reason, to go to camps and cons. Contribution Day is a pretty exciting event to go to. So some of the things that we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to read this slide for ADA purposes. We're going to talk about sharing knowledge and the different ways that you can do that. I want to go into what speaker workshops are, not only to help you share your knowledge, but also contributing back to those speaker workshops as well. We'll go over the many community initiatives that WordPress has, and we'll go into a little bit more about organizing events, specifically that one community initiative. So sharing your knowledge is a great way to give back to any sort of platform that you work with. And you can do that in a number of ways. And I do want to clarify most of the images in this slide deck are purely decorative. If there's any sort of context I need to share, I'll describe the image. And then all of these links that I have listed at the bottom of the pages are in that link, in that document that Katie linked in the chat. So the different ways you can share your knowledge, you can give presentations, you can provide trainings, and you can mentor. So some of the benefits of sharing your knowledge is you can really be seen as an authority in your field. If you have an interest like, say, SEO or accessibility, you can be seen as a subject matter expert. Speaking and training helps build your confidence. The more you speak and the more you interact with community members, that will help with your confidence. You know, um, it gives you a rewarding feeling of accomplishment. There's nothing like presenting information to a crowd of folks and seeing in chat or seeing their faces light up when they understand a concept. Uh, well, this is more for pre-COVID days, but you get to travel. But even now, you get to meet people. You get to be a part of the community. Not only attending sessions, but being that speaker and being the training and interacting with attendees and other speakers. And the more you speak, the more you learn things. I know that sometimes I give proposals for presentations I'm interested in presenting. And once they're accepted, I have to learn everything about that. So, the more you teach, the more you learn. And this next one's pretty important. You can be a role model for folks. You can be a role model for historically excluded groups in your community. It's really important for folks to see people who look like them on the speaker rosters or in the core commit log or the organizing team. So I'm going to say that again. You can be a role model for historically excluded groups. So I want to go a little bit into the speaker workshops. Not only are they available to attend and hone your speaker skills, but once you've attended them, or if you're a speaker yourself, you can also be a mentor and volunteer at these workshops as well. So I want to take a look at a couple of the different modules available because I really want to kind of talk about how you can share your knowledge and build your confidence. So one module is finding a topic and writing a pitch for your WordPress talk. These are all hands-on sessions, and this one particularly goes deep into exploring what has stopped you from speaking in the past, and it will help you explore and move past your fears. They discuss some common myths about public speaking. We discuss different talk formats, and I'll go over a list of those at the end. And they also talk about focusing and finding your areas of expertise. There's the module about creating the WordPress talk itself and beyond the pitch. And this goes deeper into building out those ideas and creating an outline for your talk. Becoming a better speaker, they'll share some tips and tricks and how do you deal with questions and answers, talking about imposter syndrome. This session is really geared towards new speakers and experienced speakers who would like more tips and tricks. And this is a really valuable presentation on creating great slides. Because there are pitfalls that happen, they'll discuss the common pitfalls for creating the slide deck, and they'll talk about accessibility, not only when you give the presentation in person, but when you give the presentation online. They'll talk about, are they accessible? The lack of color contrast, is the text too small? Are you including big blocks of text instead of only limiting it to bullet points? And Jill Binder puts these on in the WordPress community, and she's always adding new content. There was a new workshop in November on how to write a story-based talk, and how to refine your online stage presence. So get involved in the community Slack channel in the WordPress space and learn more about the speaker workshops. And there's all different types of ways you can share your knowledge at, when you talk and train. I'll read through these. There's different types of presentations. There's the how-to presentation. There's the discussion-based presentation or panel-based. There's the story-based talk. You can always present a case study. People are always interested in learning what different folks do with their CMSs. There's lightning talks. Say you're not ready to give a 45-minute or 90-minute workshop based, but you know something about a topic and maybe you can share one point that encompasses maybe 5 or 10 minutes, you can give the lightning talk. And then if you know something, front and back, and you feel you're a little bit ready to move beyond the presentation style, you can give a training. So where do you find events to not only share your knowledge, but help volunteer and organize with? You can go to central.wordcamp.org for sort of a general slide and a map to where different things are. And for a more refined schedule, if you go to /schedule, you'll see which events are happening next. So now I want to talk beyond sharing your knowledge about some of the community initiatives the WordPress team have. Whether you're a fledgling designer or developer, or you just like helping out, WordPress is always looking for people to make the WordPress platform even better. And if you want to get involved in WordPress, going to wordpress.org is really the place to navigate to. They have blogs for everything, from contributor groups, general news, and upcoming events. And I'm going to go into each one of these and give a little bit of a description, but for ADA purposes, I'm just going to read through this slide about the different initiatives that are listed on makewordpress.org. There's core, design, mobile, accessibility, polyglots, that talks about translations and localizations, support, documentation, themes, plugins, community, meta, training, test, WordPress TV, themes, marketing, CLI, and then hosting Tide. And like I said, we'll go over each of these in a little bit. So let's talk about core first, because that's pretty exciting. This is more the code-based way of contributing back to WordPress. The core team makes WordPress, they make WordPress.org. And whether or not you're a seasoned developer or just learning to code, they'd really love to have people help. You can write code, you can fix bugs, you can debate decisions, have structured conversations in the issue queue, and you can help with development as well. And I just want to say, in an hour and a half or so, or if you're watching this recording later, there will be a workshop on a 1,000-foot view on the issue queue called Track for the core team. So there's design. The design group is focused on designing and developing mostly the user interface. It's a home for not only designers, but user experience techs as well. And they always are having discussions on mockups, design, and user testing. If you're a QA engineer for your shop, or accessibility is a passion for you, I really advocate getting involved in the design group. There's the mobile group. They build the iOS and the Android applications. So are you good with Swift or Java or Objective-C? This is a great place to look. The team also needs designers, UX experts and testers to give a smooth experience on every device. And we'll talk more about testing later, but the mobile group, everyone uses their mobile devices in different ways. And so this is a great place to give back with your experience. Our developers and our designers don't know how everyone uses the service. And so say you have certain settings in your phone that you don't think other people have, even just starting a conversation and talking about the way you use the product is a contribution. Accessibility, the accessibility group provides accessibility expertise across the project. They make sure that core and all of the resources are accessible. I do want to quote something from them. The WordPress accessibility coding standards state that all new or updated code released in WordPress must conform with Web Content Accessibility Guidelines at 2.1 at level AA. So that's sort of the standard across all the platforms right now is 2.1 at level AA. But what if you are studying what's coming up next in the WCAG guidelines 2.2? You can start a discussion on, you know, how accessibility is a moving target, and you can inform some of these folks about the new guidelines coming up in the future. Polyglots, you know, this is a term I didn't know when I first started in WordPress, but this is revolving around translations. You know, WordPress is used it all over the world in most languages. I don't know about the word all, but if you have a passion for translations or you know a couple of languages yourself, helping out as a polyglot and translating WordPress into your own language is a great way to contribute. You can also help by creating tools that make translations easier too. So not only doing the translations themselves, but creating tools that will help others translate. The support team, you know, answering a question, you know, is a great way to give back. You know, most people don't think that that's a contribution, but it is. You know, there are support forums and IRC. It's one of the easiest ways to start contributing. And you always know something someone else doesn't, you know. So everyone knows the answer to something, basically. And there's a blog kind of as a placeholder for discussion and issues around support as well. So that's /support. Documentation. I'm a big fan of beginning contributors contributing to documentation. And you'll hear me say this at almost every presentation I give on contributing back to open source is beginners are the perfect people to give back to documentation because you know if there's a step missing. You know, when designers and coders write documentation, they make assumptions sometimes. So beginners are great people to help fend that off. You know, because they'll know if steps are skipped. And the docs team is responsible for creating documentation. And again, they're always on the lookout for writers. Every contribution counts. And I was reading on Twitter this morning that they're now having a detailed style guide. And I'll get those links up in the documentation that Carolyn's writing. But you can report an issue or if you find a typo in the docs, you know, even that helps with the documentation process. Themes, the theme review team reviews every theme that's submitted to the community. You know, they review and approve them. You know, reviewing themes can really hone your own development skills. The team license and they work on the licensing of the themes as well. And they build and maintain the default themes on WordPress.org. And the primary focus of this team is to help theme authors transition to block-based themes, you know, the Gutenberg. So if you're thinking about giving back to the themes, you know, themes team, make sure you look into block-based themes moving forward. Plugins. For Drupal people who are joining in this workshop, a plugin is synonymous to a module that we would have in Drupal. And the plugin developers, this team reviews and sort of act as gatekeepers and for plugins that are submitted. They not only review and go over the guidelines, but they report security stuff as well, you know, and they have a blog that you can follow to keep up with the latest updates, and they have lots of resources. I think every couple of weeks they come out. So if you're a PHP developer looking to extend WordPress functionality, you know, giving back to the plugin team is great. Meta, The meta team provides support and builds tools for use by all the contributor groups. They're really responsible for managing WordPress.org websites. And their work is done outside of the regular track queue on a track called Meta Track. The training team, they create lesson plans on how to use WordPress. They create downloadable versions of the lesson plans and related materials for others to use in live workshops. And this is another place, regardless of your skill, where you can give back, because they're always looking for people to write, copy, edit, test, and audit, and review the lesson plans, because again, people want to present information that's accessible to everyone. And if they skip steps, they need to know that. So sitting in on training and providing feedback of what's missing, and how things can be taught a little bit different, is a great contribution to the training team. Testing, the test team kind of looks over the whole WordPress sphere, and they test on every device. They test, they document, and they report on the WordPress user experience. They've been focused lately on the editing experience, and creating a very intuitive dashboard. They look at the track queue and they replicate and document bug reports, and then they also provide a culture of review and triage across the project too. So this is the team that looks at all the bugs that we report, or look at the feature requests, or look at the roadmaps, and build tools to help us test things out. WordPress TV. This team reviews and approves videos that are submitted to WordPress TV. These are trainings and workshops and speaker sessions that are at WordCamps and WordCamp US. This team helps with the post-production part of it. They're also responsible for captioning and subtitling videos once they're published. Reviewing videos is a good way to learn at the same time that you're contributing. You can really help the community, and there's almost no experience required to get involved with WordPress TV. Marketing, again, everyone can use their skill set. Everyone can really think about their individual passions and niches in Drupal. The WordPress marketing team markets WordPress globally and locally, regionally, really out to the wider world. And the vision for the marketing team is to be the go-to for strategy and content for the other WordPress teams as well. And they really help, especially when you come down to like the camp level, they help with all the press releases and communications, and help dial in your content. The WP-CLI is the command line tool that we use when we develop WordPress. It's for interacting and managing your WordPress sites, from your local machine. So there's the CLI team if you have a passion for DevOps. Hosting, the hosting team wants to dial in the end user experience across the hosting environments, and they really look to industry collaboration and user education when it comes to hosting. So again, if you have a DevOps passion, or maybe you work for a hosting a company, or you work for an agency that uses a hosting company and you have some insight that you can share, collaborating with the hosting team is a good way to give back. Tide, this is a series of automated tests that run against every plugin and theme. It really helps determine whether or not there's PHP compatibility, and it helps tests errors and warnings in the directories. So Tide, the Tide team, it is a further extension of the testing team. And community, I saved this one for last because I want to talk about organizing events, because sometimes organizing events is a great diving board for people to get one, to know the community and to give back in a way that's really a low bar. So the community team encompasses a few different aspects. You know, it oversees events, just the official events that run through WordCamp Central. It helps with mentorship programs. It looks at ways we can grow our community locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. It also helps with contributor outreach, you know, help find mentors to help with different aspects of giving back. And it includes like different diversity initiatives. And one of those initiatives is that speaker workshop I talked about. If you're interested in having or organizing a meetup or a word camp in your area and there hasn't been one, the community blog is the place to start. And that's at makewordpress.org/community. There are groups to support events. There are groups to generally support the community. There's many groups in this community, many, M-I-N-I, many groups in the community. So just jump onto that page and it really kind of like displays like, I think maybe 10 groups that you can get involved with. So make WordPress communities. These groups meet, they have community team meetings and they're held on the first and the third Thursdays of every month. And they also have office hours where you can pop in. They're on Slack, so you can scroll through it for longevity. You can attend the meetings asynchronously and catch up as you go. The working group meetings happen on varied times, but if you go to that /community page on makepress.org, you can kind of do a bumper card and find out when they meet. So let's look at organizing events. So I want to talk a little bit about what specific events are. There's meetups. You know, meetups are locally organized groups that get together for face-to-face events on a regular basis, commonly once a month, but sometimes during the pandemic because of Zoom fatigue, some of them have now switched to meeting virtually and a little bit less often, like quarterly or around special events. There's word camps. These are casual, locally or regionally organized events that focus on everything WordPress. And sometimes these are extensions of some meetups in the regional area. And then there's WordCamp US or WordCamp Asia. They're global or continent level gatherings, which run for several days and typically include a contribution event. But not only that, they have trainings and keynote addresses and sessions as well. They're the larger events, you know, that happen, you know, they're called the flagship events that happen usually once a year. And then some of the roles that you can take at these events, like I said, getting involved with volunteering or organizing an event is a fantastic way to get to know your community. So starting at your local level, you know, if you're new to helping out in your community, it's a great way to know not only the fellow organizers, but you get to help organize different aspects of the meetup. And then at the regional or national level, you get to know, a wider array of people who come from all over the globe to present and train and talk at these events. So there's the design and website team. You know, are you a designer? You know, are you, do you have PHP skills? You know, are you good at content entry, you know, or provide feedback and user experience for the design website team. There's the attendee experience teams that really focus on what the event is like from the attendee's perspective. So they help with allergies, they help with visas, things like that. The communications and public relations team, sometimes you'll see it shortened as the communications and PR team. They help you with the content, help organize the blog articles on the WordCamp US websites and things like that. They'll take your copy and give it a voice, or they'll help distribute materials to the different events. There's the contributor team. They help set up a contribution day or help coordinate all the different teams that we talked about in the community initiatives. All of them have tables or workspaces at the national and regional events. And the contributor team helps organize that, but they also work with the attendee experience team and make sure that attendees know what to do on contribution day. And this role is taken a little bit different. Well, all of these roles are a little bit different, you know, now that things have gone virtual, but the contributor team is now helping organize global events, you know, more often, like quarterly sprint days for all the different teams. When we go back to in-person events, you can help with the logistics, venues, and catering team. You know, again, working with the attendee experience team, making sure that your venue is accessible. You know, are your doors wide enough for wheelchairs to come through? Are your drinking fountains low enough that, you know, people of all heights can use? Making sure that if people have allergies, you know, coordinating with the catering staff and the venues and making sure everything, you know, just flows in the right direction. There's the programming team. They're the folks who help, you know, make the decisions of what content is delivered, you know, not only from the training aspect, but also the session selection process, you know, making sure that there's a good variety of speakers, there's a good variety of topics, you know, so they help, you know, pick sessions. Sponsor team, they help coordinate with the sponsors, you know, making sure that the sponsors have what they need, making sure that bills get paid on time, you know, invoices for the sponsors, making sure that the sponsors have booths. And then there's a team that helps organize volunteers, because there's organizers, but at these events, there's also the volunteers, and the volunteers are more the day of roles. Like, if you're going to a session anyway, you can volunteer at that session to hold up the signs for the speakers that say, you know, when their time is running out, or announcing the speakers on the virtual events, you know, going, you know, having the first 2 minutes introducing the speakers and collecting questions at the end, that sort of thing. Volunteers can also help with, you know, leading people to where they need to go next at an in-person event. And from the organizer point of view, there's someone that organizes all the volunteers too. And that's a pretty important role, because they need that one person to kind of give them those tasks and responsibilities. So with that, really the most important thing about giving back to open source is to have fun, you know, meet new people, experience new adventures, you know, follow your interests. Like I said, you know, if you really enjoy accessibility, there's a few different teams that you can join. Use your skill set. Everyone's skill set is important, whether or not you're a writer, a marketer, a content author, you know, a website designer. Everyone has a unique skill set, and everyone has something to share. And then most importantly, you know, follow your passions. What do you love to do? Because we already work, and we might not work with what we love to do, but when we give back to open source, really following your passions leads to more contributions. You know, you don't want it to feel like work. You want it to feel like an extension of you. So, you know, follow your passions. And then again, you know, I'll take some questions if people have questions, but really follow your passions, you know, look to what's important to you and how you would like to shape the future of WordPress, because like I said, contributions are so much bigger than everything. You know, it takes a village to raise a CMS. And beyond this, you can reach me at Volkswagen Chick across all of the medias. With that, I'm going to stop sharing. And
Thank you so much for that presentation, Amy June. We didn't have any questions come in during the chat, during the presentation, but there was a note of appreciation for your use of WAPU in your slide deck.
I don't know, some of these are like, it's kind of neat. They have this whole website on all the different WAPUs. And not all, some of them were like borrowed from like camps and things like that, but it was kind of fun finding a WAPU for everything. You know, I'm like, okay, how creative can I get? That's another thing that people can contribute with is designing WAPUs. That's a pretty neat little thing if you're a designer.
And a very unique thing for the WordPress community.
Okay, Joel has a statements last question that I'll read for folks who are watching this later. He says, or they, Joel says, I've recently started to be active in core Slack and even got to participate on a release day, but I've never used Track before and it's rather intimidating. Are there resources that help people get comfortable with Track? And the answer is yes, there are. And I'm not going to not talk about them now, but in an hour and 20 minutes or so, I'm going to give another presentation with Pantheon about looking at Track from the 1,000-foot view and different ways that you can look at Track, but there's all different kinds of resources. The first resource I would recommend, let me pull up a link. It'll just take me a second. But there's a contributor handbook that is super helpful. And I do talk about it in the next workshop, but I'll share it in the Slack channel. And there's also a wiki on Track as well. And it isn't very, I don't want to say it's not very user friendly, but it is, you're right, it is intimidating at first glance. You know, sometimes picking that first bug is the first issue is the hardest part. But the Track queue makes it easy. They have a link to first time bugs, which is kind of nice. And they save those for new contributors, not necessarily like not coders, but for just learning the contribution process. But keep going to those bi-weekly meetings too, because that's a great way to find a mentor. And it's a good way to get used to that release cycle too, and like understanding the ebbs and flows that go along with that. And then the release cycles are one thing, and then the Gutenberg team has a different set of release cycles too. I don't know too much about that, but I know that they work on a different cycle than the core team. But I'm a big fan of, like, if folks have never contributed back before, if you like to go to meetups and things like that, I think volunteering at meetups or WordCamps is a great way to get started, because you get to know people and you can kind of hang out with people on all the different teams to see what you think is a good fit. And what's nice about our times right now is things have moved virtual, so that geographic barrier is released. So, you know, attending a WordCamp, if you're in London, and attending a WordCamp in LA is very doable now, you know, and attending those sessions and getting to know and getting to know who does what, and, you know, kind of reaching out to them, because most of us are really friendly, and just reaching out and sending a DM, we can like point people in the direction of where they need to go. So now that that geographic location or barrier is gone, I think, you know, really discovering like what the meetups and what the WordCamps have to offer is like a good diving board.
It was a really great meetup, either earlier this month or late November, where multiple meetup groups across the United States and internationally grouped together and pooled resources and made a giant mega meetup with lots of speakers and great content.
Joel asks about WordCamps. Is there a way to see if there's anybody locally who hosted WordCamps in the past? I don't see any nearby in the upcoming, but it would be really great to see if there's a local community nearby. You might have come on a little later. I did share a slide about WordCamp Central. WordCamp Central, and I'll pull up
I can
that.
look for that.
Okay. That is a sort of a good repository of like all the WordCamps are coming up. If I remember right, there might be a link to past WordCamps. And then if you go to the community, makewordpress.org/community, they have event organizer teams. Like, I don't know if it's like posted anywhere, what's happened in the past, but you can see who's on the current teams and you can ask them those questions.
If you follow the link on the main page of WordCamp Central down at the bottom that says more WordCamps, it will bring up some more detailed information about upcoming WordCamps, and there is another link there to go to past events.
Okay.
And each event usually has their own website and should have their main organizers listed.
Mm-hmm. And what's nice too is for upcoming camps, you can sign up for the news section for upcoming camps in your area. So say you're from, Charleston, North Carolina, and you'll see that they don't have a website up yet, but you can subscribe to their newsletter. Then as soon as they decide their dates or get their call for papers up, you're on their subscription list and you'll get that. There is no like central RSS feed where you can click for one. You have to do it individually for each one of them. But I just kind of, because I like to talk at camps, I just make it a habit to visit that central page every couple of weeks to see, because you never know, because it could be like, I've been to the Bay Area meetup a couple times, but then there's like this random Petaluma thing going on. It's like, oh, that's like even closer to me, so having that be kind of like just a habit you get into. Does sound like you need to start one. I think WordCamp has a certain way they do things. I don't know how rigid it is now that it's virtual, but they've had it where to have a WordCamp, you would have organizers from several meetups help with the WordCamp, like a set number of organizers from the meetups will be the core organization team for the WordCamp. So that's something to think about too, is like getting into reaching out and seeing all the meetups around you and like getting people to kind of help you organize that WordCamp event, because it is work organizing a camp, especially if you have to organize the venue and put together a call for speakers, all that kind of stuff. That first one's sometimes the hardest, because you don't have that legacy content to build off of.
I just dropped a link into the chat for the WordPress WordCamp Organizer Handbook that will give you all of the information you need to know about how to connect with the main core team, how to tap into your local meetup groups to find help, and all of those things. I think it's been, I'm from Michigan, so I think it's been a number of years since there has been a WordCamp in Indiana. I remember there being one, but it must have been like 5-6 years ago. So it's time.
Thanks, Katie. Any other questions?
Right. Not hearing or seeing any more. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. We do have, like we mentioned, another workshop with Amy June coming up in a little bit more than an hour, about an hour and 15 minutes at 2 p.m. Pacific about WordPress track words. My goodness. From the 1,000-foot view of how it works, how to get involved, how to learn a little bit more. And then on the 15th of December, we have 2 more trainings scheduled. One at 8 a.m. Pacific. It's how to create and triage issues. And the second at 11 a.m. Pacific with Drupal documentation guides. There will be a couple more that week as well, but those are not officially on the calendar yet. Thank you again, Amy June, for your time this afternoon and for all of the knowledge that you've given to our community.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.